The UFC is coming into Marty Lewis territory. That's right. We've got a fight night in UFC Saudi Arabia, and it's time for me to give my breakdown and predictions for UFC Saudi Arabia. Robert Whittaker versus Ikram Aliskerov. Turkey Ali, big Marty Lewis fan. So I hope that we see some high-level boxing here from Robert Whittaker to make the man proud. But I'm looking forward to this one. It's probably one of the best fight nights of the year. Might be the best fight night of the year, but we will not know until these fights play out. Really excited for this one. This should be in the daytime for us Americans, and that's a good thing for the European fans as well that are used to staying up till 6 a.m. I'm really happy that this is the card that we're getting after Tatsuro Taira versus Alex Perez, which was quite literally the worst card I've ever seen in my entire life, and that's not a recency bias thing. That's just a fact. It was atrocious. It was disgusting, and I'm looking forward to breaking down these fights. So without further ado, the timestamps are in the description if you guys want to hear a take of mine on a particular one of these fights. But let's get down to the first fight of the night, which is Xiao Long versus Chang Ho Lee. This is a tough one. I believe this is the tournament finale for the road to the UFC. Chang Ho Lee has done more impressive work on the road to the UFC, which is sort of like the Dana White Contender Series, but more of a tournament format in Asia. He's gotten a bunch of ground and pound finishes, and he is the guy that has a nicer record. He has a 9-1 record, and Long Xiao, 26 years of age, he is, I think, 4 years younger than Chang Ho Lee, doesn't have the same impressive work on the road to the UFC. He's not getting a ton of finishes, but throughout his career, he has fought much better levels of competition. That's the thing that I found out when I was doing some research on Chang Ho Lee, is that his level of competition is just kind of dog shit. Like, yes, the guys that he's fighting on the road to the UFC are all right, but again, it's like, we got to think of it this way. You know, there are cans in the UFC, right? There are guys that are at the bottom of the barrel in the UFC, like Sedriques Dumas. You know, we'll talk about him in a little bit, but my point is, we tend to think of, oh, road to the UFC, this is like the big tournament. These are where the best fighters in the world are going to, but not really. The best fighters in the world are in the UFC. The best fighters in the world are in PFL, right? These guys are capable of making it at a low level. Like, there aren't really that many super high-level guys. You get what I'm saying? You get what I'm saying, all right? Chang Ho Lee is looking better against cans. Long Xiao should be looking better against cans, but my point is, he's more battle-tested. He's 26-8. You know what? Fuck that. Fuck all that. I'm picking Xiao Long. I'm picking Xiao Long. He's fought better levels of competition. He's 26 years old. The only loss he's taken throughout the past 6 years has been to someone that's already made it to the UFC, that's had 3 fights in the UFC, who's not that great. Let me just remember his name. He got a knockout on the Dana White Contender Series in a big KO in his UFC debut. Christian Quinones, who's not amazing, but my point is he's fighting guys that are making it to the big show. And yes, he's had some decisions, but maybe he's fighting better guys than Chang Ho Lee. Long Xiao is a really good grappler, and he's got good control. He's got 9 submission wins throughout his career. And Chang Ho Lee has got a bunch of ground and pound finishes in his last couple of fights, but he's more of a striker. He likes to rely on his chin. He's never been put out. He's never been knocked out. And Xiao Long has been KO'd, which is why originally I was going to go with Chang Ho Lee. But I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to go with Xiao Long to win this fight by a decision or a submission. I'm watching Chang Ho Lee fight, and he's just sloppy, man. Listen, he's tough, but there's just nothing to write home about. And I kind of like Xiao Long's ability to impose his will with a clear-cut path to victory that I can sort of see in his fighting style, rather than Chang Ho Lee just because he's got the nicer record and, he's tough. And listen, I'm picking Long Xiao. I think I'm a little bit more impressed with his ability to get from point A to point B being a path to victory by imposing his will clearly. Xiao Long should be able to win this by decision or a submission. So I'm picking him to win this fight. Let's get on to the next one. Sedriques Dumas versus Denis Tiuliulin. I am a fan of Denis Tiuliulin. He's got that sort of Nate Diaz-esque style, but an old washed-up Nate Diaz-esque style, right? Sedriques Dumas, I mean, he came into the UFC, and I thought I was going to see something special in this guy's striking. I thought he was going to be putting people away and fighting with a flashy style, but he's very underwhelming on the feet. He's just not really shown us anything impressive on the feet. And I would think that Denis Tiuliulin is capable, or I do think he's capable of beating up Sedriques Dumas on the feet. Yeah, he got schooled in his last fight against Christian Leroy Duncan, but Christian Leroy Duncan is a savage, and he's a really high-level striker. Sedriques Dumas couldn't even hope to come close to that level of skill on the feet. All right, he's gotten beat by Gregory Rodriguez. He's gotten KO, Denis Tiuliulin is, but that was on the ground. And Gregory Rodriguez is a monster, and he's got amazing grappling. Jung Young Park has really good grappling as well, and he beat this guy via rear naked choke. So that's where it gets interesting, right? Because Sedriques Dumas has been showing his grappling a little bit. He showed his grappling against Zaitar, and he was able to edge out that decision. And he also showed his grappling against Cody Brundage, where the commentators were, making it seem like he had a GSP-esque performance, which really goes to show that GSP was kind of boring back in the day. So the question is Sedriques Dumas going to be able to take him down and finish him like Gregory Rodriguez, Christian Leroy Duncan, who did TKO him on the ground, and Jung Young Park? All really solid and fighters that could literally get to the elite level. I mean, I've gone on to say that Jung Young Park is one of the better submission artists and fighters in the middleweight division. Denis Tiuliulin's old. He's gotten his ass whooped every single time it gets taken to the ground, but Ikram Aliskerov took him into the third and couldn't finish him in the first and second. And that was only a few years ago. And, that's not a great look for Ikram, by the way, but I actually think Denis Tiuliulin is going to win this one. I think that might just be me picking him based on my wanting him to win. So I'm actually, I'm a little bit unsure, actually. This is a tough one because I want Denis Tiuliulin to win. I want him to beat Sedriques Dumas up just because I like that drunken man style on the feet. You know what I mean? The heavy forward pressure, willing to take a lot of damage. He's one of those guys that Sean Strickland will talk about and say, Denis Tiuliulin's always begging me to spar. He's always trying to get rounds in, always going to war. Denis Tiuliulin's one of the guys Sean Strickland can go to war with in the gym, right? And that's pretty impressive. It's just he's probably one of these guys that doesn't like to wrestle. I don't know. Sedriques Dumas out wrestling Cody Brundage, okay? Zaitar, man. I think Tiuliulin's going to whoop his ass on the feet. You know what? I'm picking Tiuliulin. I'm going with Tiuliulin. I think that if Sedriques Dumas takes down Denis Tiuliulin, he's going to be able to keep him there, but I just think eventually Tiuliulin's going to be able to beat him up. And I think Sedriques Dumas, I think he's going to have a little bit of ego in this fight. And I think he's going to look at Tiuliulin and look at him like an old drunken man and think that he can style on him, but he's going to find out the hard way. Risky pick, but I'm going with Tiuliulin. I don't think that Sedriques Dumas is on the same level as Gregory Rodriguez and Jung Young Park. Oh, shit, actually. I'm looking at another rear naked choke loss. Kimura, rear naked choke. Fuck, man. This is actually a tough one because Sedriques Dumas could just take him down and keep him there, smudge him into the canvas. You know what? I'm changing my pick back to Sedriques Dumas. You guys just, you heard it here first. I think Sedriques Dumas is going to take down Denis Tiuliulin. And this is not one of these things where I'm going to say, well, I was right both times. I was right on both ends. No. My pick is Sedriques Dumas. I think that I was being a little bit biased, and I want Tiuliulin to win. I want this fight to be fun. I think this is going to be a shit fight with Sedriques Dumas taking Tiuliulin down. And yeah, he's not going to finish him because he's not on the same level as these high-level grapplers. But he will control him. Unfortunately, no one wants to see it, but he will control him, and he will get a shitty win. So, yeah, we're just going to have to deal with it, guys. But anyway, let's get on to the next fight. Magomed Gadzhiyasulov, going to get that name right the next time I pronounce it, versus Brendson Ribeiro, all right? I like Brendson Ribeiro, and I want him to win this fight, but I'm not going to be biased here. Brendson Ribeiro has a chinny chin. He does not even hit the Irish jig when he gets hit. I mean, Brendson Ribeiro goes out. He's like a Johnny Walker, part 2, actually. His chin's terrible. He's got a freakishly long reach. He has an 81-inch reach. He's not that big for the light heavyweight division, though, so it's a little weird. He's got, like, arms that just don't really match his frame. And I just think that Magomed Gadzhiyasulov, it's honestly pissing me off that I'm not able to pronounce that name. Magomed Gadzhiyasulov. You know what? Fuck that! I'm calling him Magomed. Sorry, guys. I'm calling him Magomed right now. I'm calling him Magomed. Brendson Ribeiro is going to get knocked out by Magomed. Magomed is going to get in on the inside, and I've noticed that Brendson Ribeiro, if he's not able to keep people at the very end of his 81-inch reach, his long, rangy strikes, which he has a lot of power on those strikes, he just doesn't really have great defense. He doesn't keep his hands up. He doesn't, bring his guard back up quick enough. He's very open when people can get in on the inside, and we noticed that in his last fight against Zhang Ming Yang. I did pick Zhang Ming Yang to knock him out. I think Zhang Ming Yang is a more dangerous, bigger power puncher than Magomed is. But I'm still picking Magomed because he reminds me of Magomed Ankalaev. And it's not just because his first name is Magomed and he's in the light heavyweight division, but just the way he fights. He's fighting guys that are shit. Let me just say that. He's fighting like 40-year-old Bahrainian guys. He's from the same sort of scene as Shamil Blabgaziev. Like, he's literally from Bahrain. So what I've noticed with these guys is in those promotions out there in Bahrain, most of the opponents that you'll find Magomed Gadzhiyasulov fighting are like 50 years old, or the age on Tapology will be NA. It's not, you don't even know. It's the classified information. These are guys that the freaking Bahrainian government's just tossing in the octagon so that these guys like Magomed could build the record off of, because they all want, it's Project Khabib out there. They want to create the next Khabib. I'm actually thinking that that's what's going on. Magomed is fighting Cans, and he went to a decision on the Dana White Contender Series, which it is what it is. But listen, he's not the biggest finisher on the feet, and he's going to like this decision with this 40-year-old guy from who knows where a couple fights ago, but he looks really clean with his striking, okay? His defense is pretty solid. He's got decent kicks, and his boxing is just crisp. He's got crisp boxing, and he's got nice tight hooks on the inside, and I could see him catching Brendson Ribeiro the same way Zhang Ming Yan did, okay? Because I could see Magomed evading one of the long, wiry shots of Brendson Ribeiro and being fast enough and crisp enough on the inside in the pocket to be able to land a clean shot on the chin of Brendson Ribeiro. I think that Magomed's a little bit too clean, a little bit too defensively sound, and risk-averse to get caught by a wiry striker, Brendson Ribeiro. At least he's too defensively sound for me to pick against him in this one, okay? Poor Brendson Ribeiro. I mean, he had a really fun Dana White Contender Series fight, but his chin is going to be his issue throughout his career. Let's get on to the next one. Rinat Fakhretdinov versus Nicolas Dalby. Nicolas Dalby is getting better at the age of 40 years old. I mean, it's honestly insane watching Nicolas Dalby peak in his 40s. A little bit suspicious, I'll be honest. I mean, this guy's cardio is insane. He's like a striking version of Merab Dvalishvili in the welterweight division. Of course, we saw what he just did to Bonfim. Totally broke him in the second round, and the pace that he put up on Bonfim was just nasty. He did the same thing to Salikov as well. I mean, he's been just putting pressure on people like it's nobody's business, okay? It seems like the thing Joe Rogan would say. He's been putting pressure on people like it's nobody's business. But I think Rinat Fakhretdinov is going to be able to hurt him early. This is the thing about Rinat Fakhretdinov. His gas tank looked a little bit suspicious in his last fight against Dos Santos, where people were saying it was a fraud check because he went to a draw. But he did drop Dos Santos early, and Dos Santos is tough. Dos Santos is a more dangerous man than Nicolas Dalby. Rinat Fakhretdinov dropped him like a sack of potatoes in the first round. We saw what he did to Kevin Lee in the first round. We saw what he did to Brian Battle. Rinat has tons of power in his hands. Yes, that power comes crashing down as the fight progresses with this guy, and we saw that when he was tested, and he couldn't have his way the whole time. But Nicolas Dalby was controlled on the ground by Bonfim, and Bonfim just kind of quit on us a little bit and kind of just wilted big time. And I think that Rinat did show some toughness against Dos Santos. He was game in the later rounds of that fight. He was game in the third round. Even though he was getting outstruck, he had a smile on his face. He was saying, bring it on. And I liked the mentality that he showed in that fight. And I'm looking at Bonfim being able to control Nicolas Dalby on the ground for the second half of the first round, and even being able to get a takedown in the second round. And I think Rinat Fakhretdinov is going to be able to do the same thing, and I think he's going to be able to hurt Nicolas Dalby early as well. And so what I'm thinking is, I do believe that Rinat might not finish Nicolas Dalby because he's got that insane gas tank, which means he's got a really good ability to recover. He's coming in really good shape. But I just think that he's going to start slowing down, and he's not going to wilt and gas and quit as much as Bonfim did. Now, of course, it's credit to Nicolas Dalby for making him break with that type of pressure. And, you know, Dos Santos was putting good pressure on him, and Dos Santos was digging to the body of Rinat Fakhretdinov, and, you know, we saw Rinat taking some big breaths. I could see Nicolas Dalby doing the same thing. I don't think this guy's going to break, so I'm thinking Rinat is probably going to win the first and second round and probably drop the third round. I just don't think he's going to get finished. I don't think he's going to break. And I think he's going to be a little bit heavier on Nicolas Dalby, a little bit more experienced on the ground. He's fought better levels of competition than Bonfim as well. So I trust him to be a little bit more composed and not rush things and empty his gas tank when he's in a dominant position. So my prediction, I think Rinat drops Nicolas Dalby early, and I think he edges out the second round. I think he drops the third, and he'll win a 29-28 unanimous decision. Let's get on to the next one. Nasrat Haqparast versus Jared Gordon. Jared Gordon's coming off of a win over the geriatric Mark Madsen, and although Mark Madsen is a world-class grappler, he is a geriatric, and, you know, Jared Gordon himself was getting rocked in that fight, which wasn't looking good. Basically, this is the way that fight went. Two old heads, Jared Gordon versus an even older old head, Mark Madsen, in the clinch, landing big uppercuts on each other, both the guys wobbling around until Jared Gordon was the one that was able to get the KO. It looked like a rock'em sock'em robots in the pocket sort of fight. Nasrat Haqparast is getting better. He's only 28 years old. This guy has been around for a long time, but I'm noticing a little bit of an uptick in his performances right now. All right, with his finish over Jamie Mullarkey, and yeah, Jamie Mullarkey is toast and he's cooked and he's been baked in the oven at 400 degrees at this point. You may as well serve him for Thanksgiving dinner. I mean, Jamie Mullarkey's done, but Nasrat Haqparast, let's not forget, because people forget, man, this guy went to a decision with Bobby Green, and he honestly did a little bit better than Jim Miller. At least he didn't have big moments like Miller did, but he didn't get his face butchered the same way. All right. And if you look at Nasrat Haqparast's fight before Jamie Mullarkey, Landon Quinones, I mean, that was a great fight. That was a high-output fight. And my criticism of Nasrat Haqparast going into that fight was always he fights like an NPC. He doesn't do enough. He doesn't let his hands go enough. I think that he's been doing that, right? He was very aggressive against Jamie Mullarkey. He was aggressive against Quinones. And I believe that he's coming into his prime. Jared Gordon's 35 years old. He does have heavy hands, but it's more thud on a Jared Gordon punch that you have to worry about. He's got big thudding punches. Not necessarily a guy that's going to go out there and sleep you. And he's certainly not a guy that's going to be able to play that range game and pick you off every time you come in and catch you with a speed advantage like Bobby Green, right? He's also not got a frame advantage over Nasrat Haqparast like Dan Hooker had, where Dan Hooker was able to keep Nasrat up against the fence. And in the striking exchanges, he was also a wiry striker. Jared Gordon is the shorter man, and he's going to have to go in here and diddy box. And I understand he's probably going to be playing that Yoel Romero speech, but I think that Nasrat Haqparast is going to be able to light this guy up on the outside. Jared Gordon was getting rocked a little bit against Mark Madsen, and he got flatlined badly against Bobby Green, which is something that, people do tend to look past because, again, on paper, it's not, we got knocked out by Bobby Green. On paper, it says no contest. But in reality, in the real world, Jared Gordon got slept out badly. That was actually one of the nastiest KOs I've seen in, that year that it happened. That was a nasty knockout, all right? Nasrat Haqparast, it seems like he's, packing a little bit more of a punch. He's throwing more output. He's got slick boxing. And he's got a right takedown defense, and Jared Gordon's not like he's not the king of wrestling. So I think Nasrat's actually going to be able to beat the fuck out of Jared Gordon. I think he's going to be able to put his ass out or just win a decision against him. But I'll be rooting for Jared Gordon. I'll be rooting for the man, but I do think that Nasrat Haqparast will be able to beat him. But maybe we'll see a Jared Gordon Diddy Man boxing decision. All right? And maybe we'll see that Paddy Pimblett rematch. But you know what? Nasrat, I think he's going to win this one. He's looking better these days, and I'm starting to enjoy his fight style a little bit more now that he's throwing some more output. So let's get on to the next one. Sharamagomedov versus Joilton Lutterbach. Joilton Lutterbach is a nobody, and he's 38-10, okay? And that's a bit of an ugly record, all right? 31 years old, 6 foot. He's had, he's got a good background in kickboxing, but he's losing to Edouard Salk. He's losing to Jordi De Souza. He's losing to Marco Antonio. He's getting his ass kicked by these guys. You're thinking, well, who the heck are these guys? And yeah, they're from the kickboxing world, and some people are going to sit here and they're going to say, oh, he's losing this guy, but that's in kickboxing. Those guys are built different. Remember, the talent pool is actually deeper in MMA. And Sharamagomedov, I know people critiqued his performance against Bruno Silva, but he whooped Bruno Silva's ass on the feet. He absolutely whooped him on the feet. And he doesn't get enough credit for that because, yes, he got taken down, but for the majority of the fight, he was beating the fuck out of him. This guy throws kicks with the same effort as a boxer will throw flurries of punches. I mean, I know that kicks take a lot more energy, but Sharamagomedov whips them up there like he's just tucking out jabs. He's got some of the best leg kicks, best roundhouse kicks, and he's got another level of speed on them, another level of comfort with just throwing tons of them, and he doesn't gas out if he's striking on the feet. And yes, he got taken down in his UFC debut, but he's fighting a striker for the most part who isn't like this dominant grappler. And you could make the argument that, well, Bruno Silva wasn't a dominant grappler either, and that would be true. But you got to think that Sharamagomedov is rapidly improving upon his grappling. That is the one thing that he has to work on. And a lot of really solid UFC fighters show holes in their UFC debuts. Look at Alex Pereira. He got taken down by Andreas Michailidis. Yeah, he knocked him out in the second round, but you could just say, well, Sharamagomedov beat up Bruno Silva badly and styled on him on the feet. Yeah, he got taken down, but he still styled on him on the feet. He showed a hole in his game, okay? Alex Pereira shows a hole in his game, and he still goes on to do really good things. I'm not saying Shara goes on to become a double champ. I'm just saying we've seen a lot of solid fighters not look so perfect in their debut, all right? Max Holloway back in the day. I know he didn't have a lot of hype, but he was getting taken down. He was getting submitted, right? And not only was he getting submitted, but he was getting controlled on the ground by the likes of Conor McGregor. I think Sharamagomedov is going to actually have better takedown defense in this fight, and I think he's just going to style on Joilton Lutterbach. So I'm picking him by decision. Hopefully he gets a KO, though. Let's get on to the next one. Johnny Walker versus Volkan Oezdemir. I am going to pick Volkan Oezdemir. All right, now I'm a little bit worried because as I watch Volkan Oezdemir fights back, I do notice that he is pretty hittable, right? He just doesn't have the same defense as Magomed Ankalaev. He doesn't have the same defense as some of these elite guys, but he has heavy hands. And I think he's going to KO Johnny Walker in this fight, who we already know doesn't have a great chin, but now it's going to be worse than ever. All right, Johnny Walker's been knocked out a bunch of times before he came into the UFC. He's gotten knocked out multiple times in one fight before he came into the UFC. Now he's been put away by Magomed Ankalaev. He's been knocked out by Jamal Hill, Corey Anderson. This guy can't take a solid punch. And if he doesn't finish Volkan Oezdemir in the first round with his wild strikes, right, these like spinning heel hooks and spinning back fists and flying knees, which he might be able to land because he's got like a freakishly long reach and a crazy frame, and he's very strong, and he's super fast early, and he's unpredictable. He can knock out Volkan Oezdemir. I just think Volkan Oezdemir, the crafty veteran, battle-tested as he is, I think he knows what he's up against here, right? He knows he's going in here with a guy that could basically knock out an elephant in the first round. If he goes in there with a high guard, if he goes in there, bobbing and weaving and just keeping the guard up, seeing what's going on, I don't think Johnny Walker's got anything for this guy when it comes to the boxing. Johnny Walker's boxing is weak, man. Like, he throws a better spinning back fist than he does a right hand. He's got a decent jab, but it's working against paper, no legs Anthony Smith, who's already been chopped down like a Christmas tree, right? Anthony Smith, if leg kicks aren't allowed, if you take leg kicks off of the sheet of paper that Anthony Smith wants to fight at, I actually think he could box with Johnny Walker fairly easily. If you take spinning back fists, flying knees, and you take, unorthodox strikes and leg kicks out of that, Anthony Smith outboxes him, all right? All jokes aside, Johnny Walker is going to go up against a guy that knows how to check a leg kick. Volkan Oezdemir can check leg kicks. Volkan Oezdemir can throw strong leg kicks. Now, his kicking game is not as good as Magomed Ankalaev. Magomed throws more kicks. He has better kick-checking defense, and he's just a little bit faster. But Volkan can kind of, he can really stink those. Fucking hell, dude. I mean to say, he can really sink those in, all right? Volkan Oezdemir can sink those fuckers in, and he does it after combinations with the hands. And I just trust in his ability to bide time on the feet in this one, to stay safe early on, because all he needs is one moment. All he needs is Johnny Walker to overthrow just a little bit, right? Like he did to Magomed Ankalaev. Johnny Walker missed a big punch. Next thing you knew, he was in Goofy Goober mode, looking like an inflatable balloon, and he had to run away. I mean, his chin was on a silver platter, and Magomed caught him while he was running away. It was like a cartoon, as it normally is. If Volkan Oezdemir finds that picture of Johnny Walker overswinging, and he is within boxing range in that pocket area, because Johnny Walker, he's not this guy that can just effortlessly flow at range, man. You look at Johnny Walker and you expect him to be like this really solid kickboxer. He's jabbing up and he's jabbing up and he's leg kicking. In reality, his boxing's really just nothing to brag about, man. This guy is dangerous with his wild strikes, and when he can't KO people with it, he resorts to this timid, low-output kickboxing game where he eventually makes a big mistake. Volkan's going to catch him, and Volkan's power is ridiculous. He's going to knock him out second round. He's going to capitalize off of a mistake. Walker could knock this dude's head into orbit in the first round, and I could look really stupid. Walker could take down Volkan Oezdemir and show that wrinkle in his game because he is the stronger guy. He has shown decent grappling. He's got an okay submission game. I could see him out-grappling Volkan Oezdemir. But I think Walker's going to go in there and strike a little bit. But, if you were to tell me Lucas Walker's looking to grapple and that's his game plan, and he told you that, and it's a reliable thing, then I might pick him. But I just think that we're probably going to see him go in there and just fight like he normally does. He's going to strike for the most part. I think Volkan Oezdemir is just so crafty. He's been in there a million times. He's going to a decision with Magomed Ankalaev, and it's a relatively competitive fight, right? Johnny Walker, he has nothing for Magomed. So I got Volkan Oezdemir by second round KO. Big, nasty knockout, unfortunately, for Johnny Walker. Let's get on to the next one. We have Kelvin Gastelum versus Daniel Rodriguez. Kelvin Gastelum versus Daniel Rodriguez. That's actually a pretty interesting one because I do believe that Kelvin Gastelum is coming down from middleweight, all right? Now, he actually looked all right in the first 20 seconds of his fight with Sean Brady, but then he got taken down and he got kind of dominated, and of course he got submitted in the third round. So we can't really look at the 20 seconds of pep in his step where he's putting pressure on Sean Brady, landing a couple hard low kicks, and really critique it that much. He's going up against a guy that's going to box, but I just rewatched Daniel Rodriguez's fight with Neil Magny, and he actually looked pretty good in that fight. First off, Neil Magny, he's a more difficult guy than Kelvin Gastelum when it comes to the grappling. There was a myth about Kelvin Gastelum, and the myth with Kelvin Gastelum was he's got really solid wrestling. Kelvin Gastelum, that classic American wrestling style, doesn't exist, okay? And if it did exist, it existed 10 years ago, all right? And it existed 10 years ago at middleweight. Or maybe he was fighting at welterweight back in the day and he moved up. I do believe he did fight at welterweight a long time ago. But my point is, he's a middleweight, dropping down to welterweight. The divisional skill gap is still there. Daniel Rodriguez did a really good job mitigating the grappling with Neil Magny early on. And Neil Magny finished him in the third round, but he also did that to Mallet, who is a certified welterweight, who's never been a middleweight skilled fighter, who was whooping his ass early. Mallet had a lot of hype. Mallet's in his prime. D-Rod's like 37, 38 years old. You know, I actually like D-Rod's performance a little bit better against Magny, especially in the boxing, if I'm looking at a potential Kelvin Gastelum matchup in the future, because Daniel Rodriguez's boxing is long and rangy. Daniel Rodriguez has a significant reach advantage in this fight. Kelvin Gastelum, they don't only call him Big Tubby, they call him Big Stubby. He's got stubby arms. He's got a stubby build. He's got twig legs. D-Rod has good body shots. He can mix it up really well. Kelvin Gastelum, again, coming down from the middleweight division where it tends to be, pretty simple strikers. Like, you got a Marvin Vettori throwing a leg kick and a couple of boxing combos upstairs, headhunting, right? You've got Michael Bisping, who's 42 years old. Daniel Rodriguez is pushing a Neil Magny with a significant reach advantage back. He's body shotting him effortlessly. He's landing combinations, and Neil Magny's trying to make it a smudge fest up against the fence. And I really do think that Daniel Rodriguez's success in that fight against a really frustrating opponent who does have the long and rangy striking style, who does have great cardio, that does have a really good grappling game. You can never compare Kelvin Gastelum's grappling game to Neil Magny. It's non-existent, dude. It's non-existent. And of course, the divisional skill gap, former middleweight, stubby on the feet, showcased really rough fight IQ as well. I mean, he just wasn't letting his hands go at all in the second and third round against Sean Brady. Way too patient, just kind of waiting for Brady to impose his will. Kelvin Gastelum, I know he's motivated now that he's cutting extra weight, but I'm sorry, even an old head D-Rod's going to outstrike him. He's going to keep him at range. If Kelvin Gastelum pressures forward, he's going to be eating jabs. He's going to be eating front kicks to the body. He's going to be eating body shots. These welterweights are just another level, okay? They're just a cut above an average middleweight like Kelvin Gastelum. And that's right, he's an average middleweight, all right? Back in the day, we thought of him as a granite-chinned guy with crazy cardio and a really solid wrestling game. Kelvin Gastelum's literally like an unranked middleweight skill type of fighter. D-Rod is an old head. He's coming off of a knockout loss. Ian Gary's got that slick, long, rangy striking, man. Ian Gary is going to be a top 5 fighter for a long time. Losing to him, there's no shame in that, especially when he's slipping you onto the slickest head kick you could imagine. KG's not doing that, all right? Daniel Rodriguez is getting beat up and finished by Neil Magny in the third round when Magny takes him down. And Magny, he's dangerous when he can get people to the mat, when he can get on top of them. He is very dangerous in those positions, especially in the later rounds of a fight. This is a 3-round fight against a striker. Kelvin Gastelum is looking to box. He's going to get pieced up against an old head. All right, D-Rod, even though he's old, still looked good against Magny. And I don't care if he just got KO'd. This is a massive step down in competition against an old middleweight. So I'm going with Daniel Rodriguez by decision to win this fight. Let's get on to the next one. Sergei Pavlovich versus Alexander Volkov. I am going to pick Sergei Pavlovich to knock out Alexander Volkov in the first round, okay? Now, a lot of people are going to talk about this fight and say things like, well, it could get interesting. It could get interesting. It's not going to get interesting, okay? Sergei Pavlovich is going to knock Volkov the fuck out. Sergei Pavlovich is going to knock Volkov the fuck out in the first round. This is the thing about Volkov. Yes, he has improved. He's gotten bigger. He's hitting that heavyweight prime where he's catching a second wind in his mid to late 30s. But Sergei Pavlovich, he got knocked out by Tom Aspinall. That's Tom Aspinall. That guy's probably going to go on to be the heavyweight GOAT, if not one of the best heavyweights of all time. He's different. Dude is a freak, all right? I'm hearing Coach Eric Nixick talk about him and say, he's moving around like a fucking bantamweight. That dude is a freak of nature. His speed is off the charts. Alexander Volkov has the speed of a Nico Price for the heavyweight division, all right? He's slow. And yes, he can be dangerous when people are getting tired and he's doubling up on kicks and he's, whipping the jab out. And he's landing a couple of combos, and he's flicking out the front kick. And Alexander Volkov is a big, heavy guy. And you get hit by his front kick one too many times to the body, and you might just start to fold. Sergei Pavlovich is not one of these blobs, right? This is not tied to Ivasa, big fat tied to Ivasa, who's no longer motivated, that had his big paycheck come in from Full Send and the Nelk Boys. This ain't that. Sergei Pavlovich is hungry. He lives a healthy lifestyle, and he's lifting in the gym, dude. I swear, Sergei Pavlovich stopped training MMA. He straight up just lifts. And he's going to come in here in shape. He's knocking Volkov out. I'm telling you, Volkov's slow early. Volkov is one of these guys that heats up. He's a bit of a slow starter. Yes, against Jairzinho Rozenstruik, where Rozenstruik's just getting pieced up to the midsection, it's a little bit different. Rozenstruik's patient. You know how Rozenstruik is. I know Rozenstruik had a couple finishes in his career where he was fighting some cans, where he went after them and knocked them out early, but Rozenstruik recently is like the patient guy. He's got Shamil Gaziev in front of him, totally gassed out, and he's still just jab, jab, right? He's not really going for it. Sergei Pavlovich is a fucking crazy man, all right? Now, you're not hearing the most technical breakdown. I don't give a fuck, bro. You don't need one. Sergei Pavlovich, he's called the big slugger for a reason. He's got a couple ways he can win this fight, okay? And I think I know the way he's going to win it. Sergei Pavlovich just got knocked out against Tom Aspinall because he got caught with a nasty 1-2 against Tom while he was like throwing in a hook or some shit. He did catch Tom with a hook. You know, Tom ate that. Pretty impressive from Tom Aspinall. But Aspinall's got that footwork, and he's slick, and he's fast. Sergei Pavlovich, I think he's actually going to take the same approach that he took when he fought Shamil Abdurakhimov, where he actually was patient, and he was sitting behind his long, rangy, straight shots. And I think that Alexander Volkov, who is a little bit slow, who moves around a little bit like an oaf, I feel like everything Volkov does is in slow motion in the first round. Sergei Pavlovich is going to jab this dude up, all right? He's going to jab him the heck up. He's going to be rocking him with jabs. Eventually, he's going to bum rush him with a right hand. And if he cracks Volkov, Volkov isn't fast. He's not got slick footwork. He's going to put Volkov up against the cage and tee off on him until he comes crashing down like the skyscraper that he is, okay? Volkov is literally going to get knocked out up against the fence. First round, Sergei Pavlovich, 84-inch reach. He's going to take advantage of Slokov, and he's putting him out up against the fence, cracking him multiple times. We're going to see that uppercut coming from halfway across the octagon. We're going to see the jab working early on. Eventually, Pavlovich is going to say, screw this, screw the straight shots. I'm going in for a big nasty one. He's going to land a big nasty one, and he's putting him out cold up against the fence. Okay? You don't need to get as far as but what about the body kicks and the leg kick? It's not going to happen, dude. Volkov's going to land a couple leg kicks. He's going to land a couple body kicks. Eventually, Pavlovich is going to land. It's going to be over. All right? You know, Curtis Blaydes at least did take Sergei Pavlovich deep into the first round. But Blaydes, he's a sturdier guy. You know, Curtis Blaydes also has more pop in his hands. Let's talk about that. Volkov doesn't have pop. He's got thud. He's got pop in his kicks against the fat blobs that are out of shape, 100%. Like, he was busting up tied to Ivasa. He did drop tied to Ivasa in the first round. But he's dropping him because of an accumulation of punches, right? He's rattling his head around. It's not like a boom. He catches you with a nasty shot, tons of power. It's one of those where it's like, ah, fuck. You're eating too many shots. You got to go down at least this one time, right? Sergei Pavlovich still has a granite chin. He's got weird power, literally weird power. Like, his power is not even the type of power where you get hit once and you're on your back. His power is like you get hit once and you're a little bit shocked. That's what we're going to see. He's going to shock Alexander Volkov with that power. And Volkov's going to be rattling back, and then here comes Sergei Pavlovich swinging at the hooks like a maniac. And he's putting him out up against the fence, first round KO. Mark my words. And if he doesn't finish him, then I think Volkov might win the second round and third and win a decision. But, all right, unless Sergei Pavlovich just loses his chin, I don't think Volkov's just going to knock him out with, like, the first couple of combos. Not happening. It just isn't happening. Sergei Pavlovich put away Tai Tuivasa with one flurry, okay? He put away Derek Lewis. I know it was an early stoppage with one flurry. Alexander Volkov couldn't finish Derek Lewis after beating his ass for 3 rounds. Alexander Volkov couldn't KO Tai Tuivasa. All right, we know this guy's not known for his power. I really like Alexander Volkov. I respect his skill set. I do think he has a much more well-rounded striking game, but he's slow. He's oaf-like. He plods around a little bit. It's just going to be too tough for him early on. On to the main event, Robert Whittaker versus Ikram Aliskerov. I think we're going to see Robert Whittaker get a knockdown for the first time since his Jared Cannonier fight, okay? I know Ikram Aliskerov is dangerous, and I actually think his way to win this fight is in the early rounds, dropping Robert Whittaker with a jab or with a right hand, catching Whittaker, where there's a lot of tape on this guy. He's been out. He ain't an album or anything like that. Whittaker's been around for years, all right? There's a lot of tape on him. People know what he does well, but it's so much easier said than done, all right? It's a lot easier to think you can go in there and handle the karate blitz and actually go out there and do it. Robert Whittaker's got a speed advantage in this fight. He's got an experience advantage in this fight. He's known that he's been preparing for a Dagestani wrestler. Ikram Aliskerov's been preparing for an absolute can on the Apex card last night. He's been preparing for a CPU. Now he's fighting one of the fastest strikers in middleweight history, who's got tons of 5-round experience, who also has really good wrestling defense, who's been working the wrestling defense throughout this whole training camp. And I think Whittaker, even though it's been a minute since he's fought a heavy pressure grappler, I think it's going to come back to him pretty quickly because he's only 33, right? He's taken a lot of damage in his career. He's been around for a long time, but I still think that he's young enough to be able to pull off a really good performance here against a heavy pressure grappler who's going to make this a physical fight. But I think Whittaker is going to piece him up. I think that Ikram Aliskerov is going to take Robert Whittaker down in the first round, and I think Whittaker is going to pop right back up to his feet. And I think we're going to see it again in the latter half of the first round. I think Whittaker gets right back up to his feet. And if Ikram Aliskerov doesn't finish Robert Whittaker by dropping him, that's my prediction. If he doesn't finish Whittaker by dropping him, I don't think he wins this fight. Like, he could drop Whittaker with a jab. He could get him with a right hand, and Whittaker's got a chinny chin. We saw Duplessis time his karate blitz and put him away. And I think Ikram could jump on him if he hurts him. And I think he's got a better submission game than Dricus Duplessis. So he could get him out of there. But I just think that Whittaker's got such a good scramble on him, man. He's got really strong hips. He's explosive. And this is the stylistic matchup to bring out the best version of himself. Whittaker's whole game is about being fast and explosive and in and out, and hard to find and catching you off guard. Robert Whittaker was able to get out of those takedowns from Yoel Romero. And Yoel's a better wrestler than Ikram Aliskerov. He may not be a more dangerous grappler. I don't think he is. I don't think he has the same submission game, but Yoel's strong. And he's got all the techniques in the world. Robert Whittaker was, yes, a little bit closer to his wrestling training. Like, he was preparing for the Commonwealth Games in 2017 as well. He had a wrestling background. So, again, maybe he's lost it a little bit, but he's still brushed up on all that wrestling to go out there and fight Israel Adesanya, and he was able to take him down. And Whittaker still has some of the slickest takedowns in all of MMA. I mean, there's no one that Robert Whittaker has not been able to take down, okay? I think we might even see him shoot a takedown in this fight, and I think he might even be able to get one. But ultimately, I think that he's just going to survive. I think that's what Robert Whittaker's going to do, because he's a bit of a slow starter. And I think that it is going to be tough for him early. Ikram does have some power, and he is going to be slick with his takedowns early. But if Whittaker can survive, and he knows he's been training for a 5-round fight, whereas Ikram's been training for a completely different stylistic matchup in a 3-round fight for the Apex card, Whittaker's got the advantage here, man. He knows how to manage his gas tank. I know he tired out a little bit against Dricus Duplessis, and Ikram does have really good pressure, like Dricus Duplessis, and good power, but I'm just not ready to pick the guy yet, okay? Like, I'm not picking you after beating Worley Alves and whatever, Phil Hawes. And he's taking Dennis Tiuliulin down, and he's not able to finish him until the 3rd round. And Dennis Tiuliulin's the guy that's been getting embarrassed over and over again in the grappling. That's the guy I'm picking Sedriques Dumas to beat because of the grappling, right? Now, Ikram Aliskerov is better these days, and he's improved his striking, and he's got tons of submissions in his arsenal. He's got a bunch of Kimuras. That seems to be one of his best submissions. But I just don't think it's going to be so easy for him to keep Whittaker down unless he hurts him first, okay? And I just think the speed is a different level. All right. Whittaker's boxing has improved over the years. We saw that in the Adesanya fight where he had to figure out a way to get the better of Adesanya on the feet despite having a disadvantage in reach and height. And he was able to accomplish that with tight hooks, catching Adesanya off guard coming in, countering Adesanya after he was making him miss. Ikram Aliskerov is he's a bit bummy on the feet, to be honest. And I think Whittaker's actually going to drop this guy. I think he's going to catch him off guard with the speed. And once Whittaker finds that flow state, once he stuffs a couple of these takedowns, I think he's going to make this look relatively easy. I think Ikram's going to slow down quite a bit after the first round. And, what's he got on the feet? He's got a good jab. He's got a good front kick to the body. He's got an okay flying knee. I mean, he tends to throw it a lot in his fights, but, Whittaker's not just going to sit up against the fence waiting for it. Like, he's got really good footwork. He's going to be in and out, and he's just going to be hard to find. Whittaker's going to have that fast lightning man's game, and it's going to be tough for Ikram Aliskerov to kind of figure him out on the feet. Again, this is like the biggest jump up in competition you can have in a striking battle at middleweight, going from Warlley Alves to Robert Whittaker. All right. Ikram's more dangerous than Costa, but Robert Whittaker is 10 leagues above everyone Ikram's ever fought on the feet. And Whittaker's game is to be able to fight these wrestlers. His game is to be able to reset after stuffing a takedown and to find his rhythm on the feet, to find those moments and to be fast, to be slick. All right, to make you second guess yourself about closing the distance because he's catching you off guard with these karate blitz combinations. And also, don't be surprised if we see Whittaker try to take out the leg of Ikram early. Remember the last time he fought a heavy pressure grappler, at least Yoel Romero? He was stomping the shit out of his knee in that second fight because Yoel didn't grapple a lot in the second fight, but in the first fight, he had a heavy wrestling approach and Whittaker got stomped in the knee, so he took that same approach against a wrestler like Yoel in the second one. I think that Whittaker's going to stomp on Ikram Aliskerov's knee early on to try to take away his base, to make it tougher for him to grapple. And I think we're going to see him win this fight by a 49-47 decision with a knockdown. Robert Whittaker, with all the experience in the world, is going to get this one done. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think in the comments. Until next time.